Welcome aboard the FlyJSim Boeing 727, an add-on that doesn't really get a whole lot of love these days, probably mostly because it's still only available for X-Plane 11. But no matter, today we're going to take it on a trip from Vancouver, BC to Portland, Oregon. Fairly quick trip, block time should be about an hour. Wearing the Alaska Airlines livery, Alaska's mainline don't service this route in real life, at least not right now. It is serviced by Horizon in Embraer 175s. I don't know if it was ever a historical 727 route, but we're going to imagine that it's one, and probably maybe one as it would have been in the early 1990s or thereabouts. Alaska retired their 727-200s in 1994. Anyway, let's jump into the flight deck and get to business. So, the first item that I will indeed see to, I'm once again using X-Checklist for my normal procedures, is the fueling of the aircraft. Now, I have to say, I don't exactly love the weight and balance manager in the FlyJSim 727, mostly just because you can't enter precise figures for things like passenger and cargo quantities, but we can approximate them. I've got our OFP in AviTab here, so we'll head over to the weight and balance section. So fuel, actually we'll double check the fuel page as well. Yeah, block fuel will be 19,100 pounds. So we'll dial this down to closest we can get to that. I'll round up a little bit to 19,510, so we're taking a little reserve. And back to weight and balance. So, passengers, cargo. Basically, we want to come up with a takeoff weight figure of 132,100. We're currently sitting at 134,810. So, I'll just nudge down the passenger figure some until we arrive at that. So 132. Actually, we went slightly below it there. Put someone in first class, 132.50. That's close enough to pretty much what we've been given. Saying optimal altitude is flight level 368, but because this is such a short trip, we've been given flight level 290. That's probably a bit more realistic. If anything, that might be a little high. The 727-200 isn't a great climber, but what can you do? Anyway, yeah, that's got our gross weight pretty much where I want it. I'll just kind of recheck these figures for the sake of my own sanity. And yeah, I think that's good. So, and that just continuously updates as you go. That's fine. Fueling's complete. And we'll get to powering up the aircraft. So I'll put the battery on and guarded. DC meter to battery, bus tie, warning light, that's all good. I actually am going to start the APU right away just because it doesn't take very long to prepare this aircraft for flight. So I'm not going to bother with the extra faff of putting it on external power first. So that's the APU spinning up. We'll just wait a minute for that to become available. What can I fiddle with in the meantime? You can put this in GPS mode, and I can mention that I will be using the X-Plane stock FMC as our navigation equipment today. I sort of mentioned this before the last time I flew the 727, but this thing is a little bit of a fiction. 727s received various pieces of steadily modernizing navigation equipment as time went on, and very late in service in the 90s and 2000s they might have had things that looked vaguely like this, but this is still a bit of an X-Planeism, so we're just going to have to deal with that. One of these days I might get and learn the CYVR-INS if I'm feeling particularly like punishing myself, but yeah, we're dealing with this today. APU should be ready by now. Yeah, that seems pretty stable. Close the field, close the generator. Next. Let's see. Electric hydraulic pumps 1 and 2 can go on. We can put all the fuel pumps on. The 727 is not like the 737. You're drawing fuel from all 3 tanks for the entire flight. You can open up the engine start guards. Put the no smoking and seatbelt signs on now. They appear kind of late in this checklist, and since we're carrying passengers, that we wouldn't be the best. So window heat on, emergency lights armed, beacon, nav lights on. Cover your ears for the fire test. That's tested. Also, actually, we don't really need all these lights because it's daytime, so I'll shut them off. Leave some light on the overhead just because it's not as inherently well lit. Okay, that's fine. Dome lights aren't on or anything, are they? Nope. And the next thing I can actually do is load the flight plan into here. So, status, nav data is up to date. That's fine. So, origin, Charlie, Yankee, Victor, Romeo, Vancouver, destination, Kilo, Papa, Delta, X-ray, Portland. Back to the first page for this. Our flight number is Alaska 2347. That's the flight number of the Horizon service that actually does this route currently, so a bit of a fiction, but just had to pick something. For our departure, we will be taking runway 26 right out of Vancouver. No SID, we'll just fly runway heading, and then I'm not using ATC, so we'll clear ourselves direct to the Seattle VOR. And that will be that. So, hang on. Yeah, okay. It's a very simple route, so I'm just going to enter it all manually. I haven't done a company route or anything, so yeah. Direct Seattle VOR. Direct Buzo. Bravo, uniform, Whiskey, Zulu, Oscar. And that will be the start point for the star into Portland. And it's such a short trip that I'm actually going to enter that now. So it will be the Crater 2 star. A lot of the stars into Portland seem to be volcanic in their theme. And this is the part where I actually need to pull up the chart for this. See what we're actually doing here. So, arrival, Crater 2. And the approach will be ILS. Hang on. Which runway did they give us again? Spec runway 28 right. So, ILS 28 right. Okay, well, transition is Buzo. ILS 28 right. And transition onto the approach. Let's have a look at this. So the bottom point of the star for 28 will be Shine. So what do we got here? We've got Battleground VOR, which is up here. Maver, Reedy, OMC. I think we want something like Reedy. Hopefully that's not completely borked when we get there. Yeah, that should be about right. So that's all executed. We'll check the flight plan. Clear that discontinuity since it shouldn't be there. So direct Seattle, and then direct Buzwu is the initial point for the star. Helens, Crater, Hiker, Liquid, Session, Shine, and then vector to Reedy. I'll leave that discontinuity in there for now. Reedy Macy, yeah, that all goes in just fine, and we can recheck that during the descent anyway. So that is everything for the route. For our climb, this is entirely a reference figure. It doesn't control the aircraft in any way. We're actually going to do 280 to 0.74 because that's what it says to do in the manual. And that's everything done for us. So that's programmed. We can set our stabilizer trim by doing the quick takeoff calculation. Set the bugs for flaps 5 since we'll be using that. Stabilizer trim 4.78. Close enough. Alright, that's done. Next up, we will read the ATIS for Vancouver. Get all our instruments set up. So, hang on, leave that open. ATIS red, clearance will assume given. Barrow. Let's see, I'll just quickly read the weather in general. We've got a headwind straight down the runway at 6 knots, so that's fine. Good visibility, nothing worth worrying about. In the ceiling, altimeter 3019. And we'll set all 3 of those. Cool, that's done. Now, heading, we'll set to runway heading, which will be 263. There we go. Mode selector, we will indeed set to heading. We can't arm anything in the autopilot while we're still on the ground, so we won't bother with that yet. Altitude, since we're not using ATC, we can dial this all the way up to cruise level. IIS, it says to set 220, but we'll actually do 250. This will be a departure using noise abatement, departure procedure 2, so we climb to 1,020 feet, at which point we set climb power, 92% N1, and accelerates to 250 knots, and just climb straight out from there. So IIS, transponder, I'll leave it as 2,000, and we'll put that on. So, actually, at this point, in the interest of saving a little bit of time, I'm going to go ahead and call for pushback, which is going to be tail right as a quick taxi to runway 26 right. So,
ground to cockpit, please show me where you want to go.
Tail right, we'll put it there.
Ground to cockpit, tow is
And
out.
I'm just doing that a bit preliminarily because it takes the tow a while to actually get into position. So, controls. Free and correct. Push clearance will assume given. Transponder's on. And from there, we're ready to start. I'm not using the tablet down here because it's in kind of an awkward position. So, I'm just using the AviTab pop-out. Hopefully that's not horrifically immersion breaking or anything like that. Anyway, there's the tow. Is there anything I haven't thought of? I guess we already put the beacon on a while ago because it was specified in the checklist. We probably didn't have to do that quite so early. Normally you do that to signify that you're about to start, but whatever, it's on now as it should be.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed, ready to connect.
Dookie. Really just standing by for him now. Oh, I can dial this in. 29,000 will be cruise altitude. Portland is at 29 feet. We'll round that to 30. That's fine. And I can see the nose lifting up, so he should call us in just a moment.
So connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake.
Alright, parking brakes release.
Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
Alright, we're clear to start. Start order is 1, 2, then 3. So, engine 1 started to ground. N2 rotation, looking for 20%. There it is, in goes the fuel. And starter cutout should be automatic. We'll probably hear it in a few more seconds here. And yeah, there it goes. We'll just monitor, basically for everything to come up to the bottom of the green arcs here, and not exceeding our temperatures. Okay, that's fine. Engine 1 stabilized, starting 2. And 2. %, in goes the fuel. And just monitor. A quick peek outside, why not? Some slightly improbable liveries sitting here in the US departures section of the Vancouver terminal. We won't pay too much attention to that. But, oh well, that's just the vagaries of static objects. But anyway, here we go. And I imagine it was probably stable by now, which is starting 3. And 2. %, fuel goes in. Starter cutout. I'll go ahead and close the guards. And just wait for number 3 to stabilize. Alright, 3 look stabilized. That's all good. It's 3 good starts. We can tell push crew to disconnect as soon as they're done, which should be about now.
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
Parking brake set.
In tow. Stand by.
They're disconnecting. What can we do? So, put generators on. Galley power can come on. Essential power, generator 1. Packs on. Engine 2 and APU bleed can come off. We're drawing bleeds from engines 1 and 3. Cargo heat to normal. Gasper fan on. You guys can disconnect. I already set the flight and landing altitude. Put flight ground switch to flight. Start pressurizing the cabin. APU off. Hydraulic pumps are all on already. Probe heaters can come on. Taxi clearance assumed given. Passenger signs are already on.
Disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal will be on the right. We'll see you next time and have a great flight.
I'll do the rest of those items once these guys are clear and I've seen the signal. Off he goes. And then he'll jump out and show me the pin. There it is. Cool. So, next item. Taxi light on. Auto brakes. RTO. Flaps. Set for takeoff. Verify that those come down. Flaps 5 and green light on the leading edge. Speed brakes armed. Weather radar system. Oh boy, you can really see the fingerprints on that. Who's been pointing at it? System can come on. And run the TCAS test, which also turns the TCAS on. And that's it for now. Let's go.
TCAS test pass.
It's a pretty simple taxi out to the end of 26 right here. Pretty short one as well. Having to go all the way out to 26 left from here would be quite circuitous. So fortunately we're not doing that. Now I'll just quickly review the takeoff data as we taxi here. So takeoff thrust will be 2.15 EPR, 97.4% N1. That's pretty typical. V1 128, rotate 128, V2 140. That's fine. And as usual, flap schedule 2 at 190, 0 at 200. Okay, that's all pretty fresh in my mind. The bugs are set on on the airspeed indicator and the engine gauges. That's fine. It's noise abatement departure procedure 2, so we reduce thrust and accelerate at 1,020 feet. Nice! I don't think I'm forgetting anything, he says. And yeah, we can't really preliminarily engage anything in the autopilot just because of the nature of things. I don't think so, anyway. Yeah, I can't arm heading select or anything. That's fine. Anything else? Really don't think so. I'll hold the before takeoff items until we're actually doing the lineup. That'll be that. As with before, no ground speed readout anywhere, so you just kind of have to use your common sense and intuition for what your taxi speed actually is. This feels like we're doing about 20 knots, which is fine. Generally want to keep it to 10 on the turns. Yeah, really just rechecking things, but 727 is, despite being a 3-crew airplane, not actually desperately complicated to operate. So that's all fine, really. And it will be left on Mike Niner. Start slowing down a little bit for that turn. And there's 26 right. I will take a gulp of water before takeoff. And now we can get into our lineup items. So, this says to turn the taxi light for takeoff. I don't know about that, but anyway, taxi light off, landing lights on. Probably don't really need the... well, no, I think it's pretty standard practice to have those on in the daytime. Transponder. TARA. Oh, I don't want me to do the strobe first. Strobe on. And into the lineup. We'll see if I get this right. Seems like it. Okay, and from here, everything for takeoff is pretty much going to be memory items, so... I'll stabilize. The engine's at... I don't actually know what you're supposed to do. 50% N1. Everything's good. Alright, set takeoff thrust. Takeoff thrust set, or near enough. There's a little bit of play in my throttle, so it's hard to be super precise sometimes, and I need to focus on the takeoff anyway. Holding a little bit of forward pressure on the stick, easing that off as we accelerate. V1, rotate. Nose was already coming up on its own. We'll be firm on the rotation. Rotate to about 15 degrees. Positive rate, gear up. Maintain that heading. Accelerating a little more than I need to. Alright. So, pitch forward for acceleration, set climb thrust, 92% and 1. Trim for that acceleration and retract the flaps on schedule. 190 knots, flaps 2. $200 knots, flap 0. Recheck those engines. I think I'll put the autopilot in now, so heading select, vertical speed hold for right now. And at this point, I will do direct Seattle. Did that execute? Yes. Oxnav. Approaching 250 knots. And there it is, IIS hold. until we're through 10,000. I'll just quickly review these after takeoff items. So, yeah. Auto brakes, disarm, speed brakes. I have no idea what the click spot is to disarm those, so I'll ignore it. I already put the gear handle into the neutral position. And that's about everything. Everything else pretty much should be memory items on the way up. Nav mode for the flight director, please. To the extent that it matters. And I'll reselect direct 2 when we're about 30 degrees off from this, just so that it doesn't go slaloming around trying to reacquire the track from when I commanded it before. If that makes sense. Direct Seattle. Set. Recheck that we're still at 92% N1 climb power and that nothing's overheating. And also I can do altitude select in the autopilot so that it'll actually automatically level off when we reach our cruise altitude. She's climbing pretty quickly right now, but we'll see that climb rate drop off pretty precipitously as we go up. Like, even compared to other airplanes, she just doesn't like to go much higher than 30,000 at anything like a quick rate of climb, so. Passing 10,000, lights off. Oh, and I should have put the turn off lights off earlier. Oh well. And accelerate. I'll do that sort of in bursts so that we don't completely level off. Sort of dial it up slowly. Accelerate to 280 knots until we hit 0.74 Mach, and then do a constant Mach climb. 280. And the aircraft is pitching for that without being too violent about it. And there goes Vancouver disappearing off our port side there. I suppose we can have a look. It is a relatively scenic area. Got the city, the mountains wrapping around it, all that good stuff. Back in. Tell you what, we're clear of any clouds. We're not climbing too steeply in the air. Seems pretty smooth. I think we can probably put the seatbelt sign off. And yeah, everything kind of gives you a slightly different climb profile. But again, the manual says 280 knots, 0.74, so we're going to do that. Our final cruise speed as well, if we pop into the OFP, will be... Interesting, that's given us a final cruise speed of 0.72 Mach. I actually didn't look at that before. Okay, well, so in that case, I'll do a constant Mach climb from 0.74, or correction, 0.72, and then just cruise at that speed. Okay, let me write that down then. Usually gives me a higher figure than that. Interesting. Because I just selected the long-range cruise option, which should, in principle, be relatively efficient. Efficient is always a relative term when it comes to the 727. I mean, you saw how much fuel we took for a trip this short. That probably pretty much tells you all you need to know. So, anyway, that's fine. 1,000 until transition altitude. Sync the heading bug. Always an idle fidget activity worth doing. Alright, 18,000, set standard. On all three altimeters. And check that they all seem to vaguely line up with each other. Standard set, passing 188. Now, yeah, that looks good. Well, there's not a whole lot else to do, so probably just carry on up to cruise. I'll make that switch over and do the constant Mach climb, but that's not terribly exciting, so we'll just carry on south for the time being. Okie dokie, so we have just passed through 0.70 Mach, coming up on 0.72. We've also only got 1,000 to go till cruise altitude, so we might not even really be switching over to constant Mach climb. We might just be leveling off and throttling back to hold 0.72, but in any case, as soon as we're level, there are a few items that I will attend to, just because we're relatively close to our destination. So all descent preparation will need to be completed pretty much as soon as we're level. Probably. So. Just for completeness sake. Constant Mach. That'll cause it to jump up in climb rate slightly, but hopefully the altitude select should grab it and level off with a minimum of violence. The 727's autopilot is smooth for the 1960s. Is probably a good way to put it. And, okay, now that she's leveling off, I'll need to manually throttle back. I'll set about 80% N1 for now and see what that does for us. Might even need to go less than that, we're pretty light. In fact, I'm pretty sure we will. I'll go to about 76%. Just as what my gut's telling me. Altitude hold on now that we're level. Okay, so for descent items. Now, the way I like to plan my descent in the 727 is a little bit lazy, even though I still technically have to do it all myself. So, let's see. Our first serious constraint is going to be crater here. So, I'm going to aim to be at, let's say, 11,000 feet at crater. So, let's see. And I really use the rule of thumb method for calculating top descent here. I really just go number of flight levels to lose times 3. That gives you the approximate number of nautical miles. So let's see, 29,000 to 11,000. Hoi doi doi, that's... Oh god. Tell you how bad my math is. I'm not confident enough not to recheck this with a calculator. Yeah, I thought so. 18,000 to lose, so 18 times 3. 54. I usually like to add about 5 for slop and deceleration, so let's see. I'm going to call it 60 miles. Just as a little bit of generous rounding. And then the way that I find out how close I am to that, at least as long as the star is a reasonably straight line, is I'll just go to the fixed page down here, enter, what was it again? Crater, Kilo, Romeo, Alpha, Tango, Romeo, and that will give me a distance. Now, I'm reasonably certain that this distance is in a straight line as the crow flies, as opposed to track miles on the route, which is why, again, I add a little bit of distance for slop and only do it this way if the star is a reasonably straight line. But it is in this case, so at 60 miles to crater, we will start our descent. Shouldn't be too long now. And we're already still going faster than we need to be. Let's put on 72% N1, see if that decelerates us. Should be fine. Do we have any items for this? Yeah. So top of descent I've figured out. Actually, yeah, let's check the weather for Portland. So, wind is variable at 4 knots, basically inconsequential. Visibility 10 miles, scattered at 250, temperature 20, altimeter 3013. I'll write that down, even though I'll probably recheck it as we approach transition altitude, so really looks like nothing to worry about with the weather. I've already got the approach programmed. What I will do is enter our minimums. So that's going to be 250 feet radio. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 250 feet radio. That's all good. So, yeah, Barrow, Star, ILS. Tell you what, because we're doing all basically RNAV through this to the final approach fix. Hello, Mount Rainier, I think. But actually looking a bit fuzzy, don't look at that. I will go ahead and put in the ILS frequency right away. So that is 1113. And I'll put that on both. That's set. I can't really input the course until I switch the CDI back from GPS to nav mode, so I'll just do that at the last second when we're getting ready to intercept the localizer. Okay, we've decelerated a little bit through 0.72 Mach. Put on 74% N1, and we'll try that. And I think I'll just very briefly carry on the remaining 30 or so miles until top of descent. Hello, hello. We are now 3 miles back. When I started this sentence, we were 5 miles back, almost, from my calculated top of descent point, which is, once again, at 60 miles. So we'll just stand by to do that. 61. And 60. Altitude hold comes off, throttle back a bit. And just using vertical speed mode, initiate a descent of around 1,800 to 2,000 feet per minute. And throttle back some. Maintaining Mach 0.72 to 280 knots for now. And that's all good, and I will preliminarily pull the gear horn cutout so that if I have to pull the throttles all the way back to idle, we don't get the gear horn. So that's all good. And I think I'll do a profile check at 21,000, because at that point we'll have 10,000 to go, which will mean we should be 30 miles from the waypoint. So I'll just check that as we head down. Alright, there's 280 knots, and just to switch the bug from the Mach to IIS thing, I will briefly click that in here, just because the bug on the airspeed indicator, it swaps to the Mach numbers, which don't correspond perfectly with the airspeed numbers, obviously, because Mach numbers change with altitude and through airspeed and stuff. So anyway, 280 knots, and I've got the throttles right back at idle for that now, so that's probably fine. And since we're on our way down, I'll put the seatbelt sign on. Have people in the back sit down, just since I'm thinking about it. And anything else to do? Auto brakes. Minimum should be fine for Portland. I don't have a performance calculator for the 727, so I am kind of guessing. I could theoretically use SimBrief's one, I guess, but I don't really feel it terribly necessary. It's not a short runway. It's not going to come down to the wire, probably. He says. So, still on our way down, still at 280. That, I believe, in its lumpy default scenery form, is Mount St. Helens. I'm virtually certain of that. Hardly anything else has that shape. There are a lot of volcanoes around here, but St. Helens is pretty darn distinct. Because it, you know, the top all collapsed in on itself in 1980. Yeah, anyway, anything else I can attend to on the descent? I don't think so. I think I saw to pretty much everything whilst we were level. Let me see. Okay. Well, we've only got 2,000 to go until I wanted to do that profile check, so I guess I can hang around for that. So, when this hits 21,000, this should read 30. We'll see if it does. Anything I can do with the flight director? Not just yet. Take another gulp of water. If you want to know. 1,000. Oh, that's what I obviously should have done, was dialed in our next altitude constraint, and indeed the one that we intend to be at crater, which is 11,000, and altcell. So, as we come through 21,000, that's probably going to tick down to 29 by the time we hit 21 even. Yep, so very slightly above profile. I'll just feed in a little bit more downward vertical speed, but it's really pretty minor, and we have a range of altitudes we can be at this waypoint, so I'm not super bothered about that. Yeah, coming up on Helens. Gee, I wonder why it's called that. And 2,000 more feet to go until we set standard on the altimeter. Tell you what. Gonna give it just a few seconds of speed break to get back to 280 knots, because I am right at idle power here. Not that it's that important, but being on speed should keep us on profile, in principle. Even though I was a bit loosey-goosey about how I calculated the profile. Anyway, we'll recheck the weather for Portland, because we're about to pass transition altitude. So, still 3013. No species. We are pretty close to the top of the hour, so we'll probably get new weather before we land. I can pull up the landing card, how about? Let's see. Jeez, with how light we are, I'm almost half tempted to do a flaps 15 landing. I don't know, I'm accustomed to landing with flaps 30. I'll probably screw it up if I do 15. I'll take some time to decide on that, maybe. Okay, so 3013. Cool. That will also probably slightly alter our climb profile. Let's see, so when we pass 16,000, we should have 15 miles to go. Yeah, we're still slightly high on profile. I'm going to put the speed brakes out a bit. Since we're about, well, 800 feet high on profile. Not catastrophic, but might as well try and be precise. I do have the chart telemetry on. It's a bit of a crutch, but this is a complex airplane to navigate in, especially when I'm by myself in a 3-crew thing, so it's there as a task saturation avoidance measure. Yeah, no speed restrictions. Nah. Okay. And now that should be us turning towards Crater. It is indeed. So, distance to the waypoint will now be the same. The reduction in speed should get us close enough to profile. We need to be below 13,000 at Crater, which we almost certainly will be, it says. Actually feeling like we don't have a lot of distance left to get rid of 2,000 feet. Alright, increase the rate of descent then. With this... Well, I'll put the speed brake back in for now just because we're getting really slow. But I'll leave it out. I'll pull it out again to maintain 250, I think. I'm gonna guess that we've got a bit of a tailwind if we've been high on profile. In fact, the OFP probably could have told me what the upper winds were gonna be, at least approximately, but, you know. Okay. I think we're good now. We're at least gonna make our constraint. And then once we've passed that, next thing will be between 7,000 and 9,000 at Hiker, and then a hard constraint of 6,000 at Liquid. Now that's not very far, so I think I'll target 7,000 at Hiker. And just a few miles to go. Still close enough to profile. Mount St. Helens has passed us back on left. Altitude alert, 1,000 to go, but I'll dial that down to 7,000 as soon as we pass the waypoint. Yeah. That's fine. Altitude select still engaged. Hang on. Vertical speed, please. Nope, don't level off. What can I do with this vertical profile? One, okay. Now we're back in vertical speed mode. Because we actually need to kind of get down and slow down pretty quickly here. Put the speed brake out, target 250 knots since we're about to pass through 10,000. Alright, it's 250 and holding. Still got a few miles to go to the waypoint. Kinda want to steepen the descent a bit. Alright. Towards that. Passing 10,000. Landing lights can come on. Verify that the seatbelt sign is on, which it is. Okay, and next thing is just our flap schedule for the actual approach, so not much more to be seen too. Okay. Well, we're below 9,000. Well, about to be below 9,000, so we will meet the constraint. It's mostly the next one that I'm slightly worried about. Because we need to be properly at 6,000. Yeah. Speed brakes coming out. Descend faster, please. 7,000 selected. And we've got 7 miles to lose 1,000 feet. Okay, yeah, we can do that. No speed constraint until done. Alright, start shallowing out that descent. We're going to make the constraint. And as she levels off, put some power in so that we don't decelerate suddenly and drop out of the sky. Maintain 240, 250. Whoa. Okay. Something got overcooked there. Get us descending again, please. altitude select. It's probably because I started turning the vertical speed knob as the altitude select had already grabbed the autopilot. Oh well. I'll just let it do its thing this time. And we should just make the constraint, I think. And there it is. Altitude select has grabbed it. I'll put in altitude hold as soon as we're actually perfectly level. So, and we can maintain this altitude probably for a while. Yeah. I think we want to be at 6,000 at that one, and 210 knots, but that can be a pretty gradual descent. See, we've got, 10 miles to go to lose 1,000 feet. I mean, we can be gentle about that. 6,000. I'll initiate that now. Shallow descent. And I'll also let her slowly decelerate. Now, I might actually skip over Reedy and go direct NACI from the bottom of the star, just because it's a radar fix that takes us straight onto the approach, in order to simplify things. In the absence of ATC, I tend to do sort of self-vectors and self-direct-twos as appear to make sense at the time. Alright, steepen your descent just a little bit, and power back. Dial up 210 knots, altitude select. That's fine. Now, anything else to attend to whilst I have a moment of downtime? Not really anything to do on the engineer's panel, I don't think. I guess I should be checking the pressurization now and then, but it would give us an alarm if we were out of... well, if that weren't functioning properly. So, 3.5 miles to go to the waypoint, leveling off, and she should decelerate to 210 in time. It must be said, when I fly the 727, if I screw up anything, it'll be the vertical profile on the star, just because it's high workload, you have to calculate it and do it all manually, but it's gone pretty well today. And obviously, the more complex the vertical profile of the star, the worse that is. A lot of stars in the US these days have very few constraints on them, which makes things easier. This one has a few, just because it has to keep you clear of the mountains. Okay, coming left. I want to say that's Mount Hood over there, but don't hold me to that. I haven't really been looking outside too much. I have been to this area IRL last year, so I kind of know the lay of the land a little bit. Anyway, that's us turning left towards Shine, which is the final point of the star. And then I think once we're a little past a beam NACI, I'll just go direct to that, and then I'll switch over to nav on the CDI and just take myself straight into the localizer. Is going to be how I'll handle that. Now let that speed come back a little for 210. And yeah. And now at NACI, I want to be at 3,700. So I'll maybe initiate the descent as soon as we hit Shine, and then I'll do direct 2 to command the turn very slightly after that. So, approaching that waypoint. let's dial in that new altitude, 3,700. And initiate that descent. Down we go. I'll wait just a little bit and then command the direct. Power back to maintain speed. And I think we're good. Let's do direct. Direct NAC, please. Oxnav should still be on. Yep, it's commanding the turn. I'll get the heading bug vaguely over in that direction. Out select, so it levels off for me. Yeah, that should set us up on a pretty good intercept angle. So, about 30 degrees to go. I'll just recommand that. $1,000 to go. Speed is holding. That's fine. And at this point, I'll just do heading select. Final approach course 283. If anything, I might turn slightly left just to sweeten the intercept a little bit. And she's leveling off, so be ready to feed some power in. And there we go. Let's do approach mode on the autopilot so that it'll grab the localizer and glide slope. Okay, localizer captured. Put some power on to hold 210 for now. Since we're a little ways out yet. Let's see. Technically we can descend to 2,900, but the glide slope is alive, so I think we should actually capture it. Yep. Glide slope's captured. Cool. 12 miles out. I'll let the speed come back and extend the flaps on schedule down to about 160. And I am going to land with flaps 30 just for consistency's sake. And we're kind of having the speed get away from us a bit, so gear down. And we're well within limits for let's see. Yeah, flaps 2. Flaps 5. And tell you what, we're even within limits for flaps 15. It's 10, isn't it? Nope, it goes straight to 15. Right, hopefully that will get rid of enough speed. I'll maintain 160 knots until about 4 DME, and then reduce to VREF, which once again is 121. Feed in some power to maintain 160. see. Gears down, we can put the remaining lights on. Alright, verify localizer and glide slope. Yep. That all seems okay to me. Alright, 5 miles, I'll start decelerating towards VREF, so power back, flaps 20. Flaps 25. Speed brakes are armed. Auto brakes. Flaps 30. And that's us configured, so power up to maintain speed. If we're stable at 500, I'll take the autopilot out. Alright, 500, stable, my aircraft. Whoops. Put that light out.
400. 300.
Not much to say, kinda just have to focus.
Minimums.
That's checked, continue.
200.
Ooh, I overcorrected a bit there, I think. Just fly the pappies now.
50, 40, 30, 20.
Ooh, I think I flared a little high. And we're down. That'll be speed brakes up. Reverse. Fly the nose wheel down. Don't exceed 60% N1 in reverse, otherwise terrible, terrible things happen. Manual braking, let's see if we can make this high speed. 60 knots, reversers off. And off we go. So, vacating items, flaps up. Speed brakes in. Auto brakes off. And I'm actually going to stop once we're past the line, because I didn't brief the taxi in, is something I forgot to do. Alright, just make sure our backside's over the line, and I'll stop, do all the after landing items, and then very quickly pull up the ground chart. So, flaps up, auto brakes off, speed brakes. No idea what the click spot is to disarm those, so I'm just going to have to ignore that. Probe heaters off. Taxi light on, landing lights, and we can put the turn off lights off as well. Strobe off, transponder, standby. I think there are at least some places in the US where they keep it on TARA on the ground, but I really don't know how that works, so I won't bother with it just now. Maybe I'll look that up later. Flight ground switch. I won't start the APU just yet until we're actually taxiing in. Okay, very quickly, give me a ground chart. Our gate is, I wrote down B11. Although that might be for an ERJ, so if it's too small, I'll go to another one. So, give me the parking gates. So, Echo 11 is back down Kilo the way we came here, so we'll head that way now. So just very briefly rechecking. We vacated on Alpha 6. Turning onto taxiway Kilo, we'll just take that straight down to... Oh, hang on. I was looking at... Whoops. I've made a bit of a mistake. That's E11, not B11, you idiot. Okay. Yeah, we need to go, out on Kilo, around on Tango. Okay. Bit of a protracted taxi, then. But, not to worry. And I've also put myself in a spot where I'm not really supposed to be. Oh boy, this is the part where the professionalism breaks down a little bit. Okay, I'll turn back around and go to taxiway Alpha, take that to Kilo, and hope no one saw whatever I just did here. Now, B11. Looks like it might be a gate that's a little small, because it might be for an E-jet, so... If it looks like the 727 won't fit, I'll just stick it in one of the Charlie gates over here and we'll call it a day. That'll just have to be good enough. So, Alpha to Tango, then Tango as it wraps around. This is indeed Tango. It's on the inside, on the apron. A little fast, brakes on a little bit. Coming around here again. Probably fewer improbable liveries showing up in Portland, probably because I have custom scenery installed for it, which I didn't for Vancouver, so the placement of these static aircraft might be a little bit more making sense. Anyway, I'm still going to delay starting the APU a little bit. I'll probably wait until we've made this turn here. Then it should be spooled up in time. We have to be taxiing in a straight line for a while when I start it, because I have to go back to the engineer's panel. It's part of that. Yeah, I'll wait till we've made the turn, and then I'll do that. Flight director can go, or mode selector for the flight director can go off. All the other autopilot stuff is off, that's fine. Yeah, the only other taxi items to attend to are APU related. Yeah, I think I'll park at one of the Charlie gates here, since there's an Alaska 737 there. That kind of signals to me that we're probably in the right place. Because I built this on a real-world service that's serviced by an E-jet, that changed things a little bit. APU, start. Please don't go off the taxiway. Please don't go off the taxiway. APU spinning up, and we were almost still on the line. So, alright, I'll just pick an empty one over here. Maybe vaguely close to that Alaska 737, wearing the new livery, which I think looks a little better, but that's probably in the eye of the beholder. Probably the most amusing thing I can say about Alaska Airlines liveries is that when I went to Seattle in 2019, which is obviously Alaska's base, the Seattle-Tacoma airport was obviously full of Alaska Airlines aircraft, which had, most of which were wearing a livery which said, "Proudly all Boeing." And at this time, Alaska had just acquired Virgin America and all of their A320 family aircraft, so I have a picture, and I'll put it on screen if I can find it, of that "Proudly all Boeing" moniker on the livery with some Alaska Airbuses parked in the background. It was kind of funny. Just a little quirk of the time. Anyway, we've got a marshaller here. I'll put the taxi light off so as not to dazzle him. And he's telling me to taxi straight, so I will. See how close to the mark he puts us. Whoops. Didn't mean to stop there. And stop. Okay. Parking brake on, go back to the APU, it's ready for us. Means APU is on the bus, and we can shut down the engines. So, once the engines are off, all the fuel pumps can come off. Hydraulic pumps can come off. We will leave the no smoking sign on, depending what period of time we're simulating. I actually don't know when smoking was completely prohibited on commercial aircraft. Because this aircraft, in principle, shouldn't be in service after 1994. I don't know if it was before or after that. It was before my lifetime, anyway. So, beacon comes off, nav lights off. Window heat off. Tell you what, we will do all the bleed air stuff, because I'll switch over to external power in just a second here. So, bleeds, we can close all 4 of those, packs can come off. Cargo heat, outflow, go closed, and that's just the remaining power down items. Where's my... Here it is. GPU. External power on. Essential power external. And I think at that point the APU can come off. And at that point, I think we can call the flight completed. Let's see how I did along with the marshaller. It was pretty much on the line. He put us on the spot for marked for MD-80. That's probably okay. We're not really outside any red lines, near as I can tell. And the autogate jetway hasn't quite done its thing properly, but we don't have animated doors for the FlyJSim 727 anyway. Yeah, here we are in reasonably sunny Portland. Tell you what, I'll pull up the maintenance system to see if I broke anything. Don't let me get away with anything. Nothing to report. Okay, I've been managing this airplane reasonably well. Well, I think that's going to be about it for this one. I hope this has been reasonably interesting to watch. I'd very much like to fly the 727 again in the future, so if anyone has any routes in mind for that, I'm certainly open to input. But I think that's going to be it for now. Toodles.